And for more on the Stockholm talks, we're joined by Boer Deng. She's the Washington correspondent for the Times of London. Thank you for joining us, Boer.
Thanks for having me.
Are you surprised that these talks broke down the way they did?
I have to say that I'm not. It's a huge disappointment, obviously, for the administration. As we were talking about a little bit before the show, it's a week when there's been a lot going on domestically that hasn't been good for the Trump administration. And so to have a good result from these talks in Stockholm, which were announced quite rapidly and quite sort of unexpectedly, would have been a very good result to sort of get the attention away from all the domestic turmoil. But unfortunately, that didn't happen.
You're saying Trump needed this? Exactly,
yeah. There's been a lot of scrutiny on the way he's been carrying out diplomacy. There's a big impeachment inquiry in the U.S., as you know. And the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, who's been in Europe, has been sort of engulfed in it. So it would have been very good if there had been a moment of American diplomacy that could give the Trump administration sort of a win to say, look, you know, we're making progress, why don't we focus on this? Instead, the North Koreans came back and said, the Americans are inflexible, they're wasting our time, and you know, within a day, the talks broke down, talks that could have laid the groundwork for another summit going forward, and that seems not to have happened.
We're getting a bit of a different picture here. We heard from Toby there, the Americans saying that they've been invited back to Stockholm. Pyongyang saying the Americans aren't delivering on anything. What is it that the DPRK wants, and what do you think Washington is willing to give?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the disconnect lies. When the North Koreans say the Americans are being inflexible and they're not bringing new solutions to the table, what they really mean is they want the lifting of sanctions off of North Korea. That's something that the Americans are going to have a very hard time doing because it would be seen as going soft. The Trump administration has really made its name on being a tough negotiator, on being able to get the best deals, and to say, look, we can lift these sanctions, sanctions that were approved by the Security Council, that's sort of widely supported by the international community, would certainly be seen as going weak on North Korea, and that's something that they really can't back down on.
Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, said that Kim Jong-un would never give up his nuclear weapons. This is a man who just recently was among the president's closest advisors. How do you think his departure plays into all of this?
I think that's the funny thing, right, is that people who disagree with President Trump don't tend to stay very long in the White House. So despite the fact that it seems like Mr. Bolton's comments may have some credibility, it doesn't really change the way this White House carries out its foreign policy. Simply, Mr. Trump will just find somebody who agrees with him and will push his agenda as he wants to. And he'll come up with a way to spin it as a win for the people that are his supporters. He's very good at that. I think sometimes internationally we don't recognize how much American foreign policy is done based on a domestic basis. And for Mr. Trump, as long as he's going out there and saying, look, I'm having these meetings, my representatives are having these meetings, he can spin that as he's making progress.
Kim Jong-un is possibly heading to China in the coming days. He's been there before. What do you expect from this visit?
I think it'll be very interesting to watch. You know, China obviously just had a big 70th year anniversary celebration that was quite successful in some regards, also a bit overshadowed by some of the turbulence that's going on. Clearly, the relationship between Kim Jong-un and President Xi will be one to watch, given how much Mr. Xi can play a role in these negotiations.
And this, of course, is China's neighborhood, the Korean Peninsula, very important there for Beijing. Boer Deng, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.